India Core Lessons on Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East by Baird Spalding. Study your own experiences. Are you not aware that silent influences working underneath the surface of your own being are those forces which control your life more than the outwardly manifest things which you express in words? However, just as these silent broodings of your own inner nature eventually find their outer expression when you are in an environment which harmonizes with them, you do not hesitate to express them. Study yourself, and you will find everything working in you just as it is in the race. What the Father sees in secret, he will reward you openly, is not an idle statement, but it reveals the manner in which all things come into being in the outer world. It becomes dynamic the moment we focus thought upon I am. That focal point is the center always, and from it emanate the authoritative commands that control and determine the entire status of manifest man. The I am must be used to indicate man's true estate, that which he is in fact, and not what he has seemed to himself to be in manifest form. I am that I am, which is the embodiment of the motivating authority of the universe. Besides that I am, there is no existence but only delusion. This name I am was God to Moses. It has come down through the ages as I am. To the Hindus, it is which means the same. Likewise, to the Aryans, it is Om. The Chinese use it as Tao. The so-called blind spots in the ether common in our radio and scientific fields are, in a sense, symbolic of the blind spots in human consciousness. The radio beam crosses right through these non-magnetic fields as if they do not exist. Our layers of atmosphere, the concentric bands of atmospheric conditions, are in motion. In our Earth, they are stationary. When a non-magnetic field moves over a magnetic field of our concentric bands, a vacuum-like condition is established. When a magnetic field passes over a non-magnetic field on the Earth's surface, it passes right through it and it is lost. It is frequently more powerful at night than in the daytime. These non-magnetic fields are like the static states in human consciousness, more intense, with greater darkness or ignorance. But the positive radiations of the spiritual I am, the declarations of that which man is in fact, penetrate through these static fields of his consciousness, and it is as though they do not exist. The persistent declaration of spiritual facts regarding nature and his place in the universe eventually will eliminate all these static fields in human consciousness as well as in his affairs. The one mind is not constantly creating new ideas. It is manifesting ideas that have been created from the beginning, for the one mind is and always has been omniscient, all-knowing. It has never been, nor will ever be, more or less than itself. It is all a process of reverberation. It is the same as our radio currents today. They are flooding back and forth or reverberating from one space to the other space. That is from space to space, as you might say. Thought is, of course, the most potent of any radiations because it has control over the vibratory field of electricity and radio. In fact, both the vibratory field of electricity and of radio will impinge and reflect from the vibratory field of thought always. Radio follows a track in the atmosphere regardless of a conductor. It follows a true track or trend. It operates through the ether. But thought, in this sense, does not travel, for thought is omnipresent. It is already there, no matter to what point you refer. It is the impingement of thought upon the electrons that causes thought to appear to move. Mind is the motivating element, thought moving concurrently with mind, and in striking upon the electrons, produces all movement in the plane of manifest substances. That which we call space is in reality the one spiritual mind. That is the principle by which the human soul, which is the replica of the spiritual mind, can overcome time and space, for there is no such thing as time and space in spirit. In spirit, all is complete, and in completeness, there can be no such thing as time or space. This is what is meant by letting the same mind be in you, which was also in Christ. Did you ever note how you yourself very often function in certain ways through an inner sense or hunch or feeling, and then all the reasons develop afterward, which show the whys and wherefores? Many people try to think it all out first. Then they never do anything but think, for there is no apparent solution for anything until after it has been done. The feeling that it can be done, or that it should be done, or it were better so-and-so, is the first activity of this sense. And if one would be still, the rest of the information would come, completing its whole plan of action. Then the intellectual explanation of the thoughts defining the process will be readily formulated. The reasoning mind, as we commonly noted, only travels over the same grounds it has previously been over, but reason is never complete until this other sense is taken into account. The mere repetition of a word does not establish it any more firmly. It only brings you into harmony with which is. It is very often possible to bring yourself into more harmonious relationship by giving thanks that it is here now, and that it is established. When you are in the nightmare, it is possible to come out of it if you will think of what you would think if you were in the waking state. A patient has been known to cure himself entirely of extreme cases of nightmare by thinking while experiencing the nightmare, just what would I do if I were in the waking state? He would have accomplished the same result more quickly had he thought what he would do were he in a perfect state of spiritual consciousness, and would have raised himself nearer to that state. If he would ask himself what he would accomplish if he could see directly through to the spiritual, it would become much more simpler and more beneficial because it would be permanent. The breaking up of a nightmare becomes automatic if just before you go to sleep you declare that you are one with perfection. It is no chance to enter when you are in this state. This same practice can be applied equally to the so-called waking state. All negative conditions and difficult problems can be corrected and solved every time by this method. You will find it very practical to ask yourself, when faced with problems or apparent negative conditions, what you would do if you were in spiritual consciousness. Get rid of the complexity of earthly living in this way. It is really just as simple as that. The interpretation of God speaking to individuals or groups of people as designated only that particular person or group is false. What God speaks to one man and one nation, he speaks to all men and all nations, for he created of one blood all nations of men, and he is no respecter of persons. But from this false interpretation, man has built up the idea of a racial or national God. This has resulted in religious wars and built up separate groups into nations. The Orthodox churches, according to Dr. Lyman Abbott, have done more toward the retrogression of civilizations than any other influence because of their hatreds. The first intention in the presentation of God was that you look immediately to the light, which emanates from your own being and from the being of every individual as being one and the same light, and that God equally manifests himself to and through all beings in exactly the same sense, without partiality or distinction. The moment you can project your vision to that light, you are at once conscious completely, namely in the divine consciousness, and there can be no separation there. With no sense of separation, there can be no separation in creed or race or nation, and hence no strife or war. It is far better to say I can, and then go right on to I am. I can is the potential fact, but I am is its fulfillment in your consciousness. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. You can never be that which you are not, nor can you be anything but what you are. If you can become anything, as you put it, you are that. It is really not a matter of becoming, it is a matter of being. Because you accept that I can't attitude in any condition or circumstance, you have accepted a division. Jesus said you could not compromise with sin. You cannot deviate from the fact and express that fact. A God-man is a genius. Christ standing forth, man expressing God without reserve or restraint. The reason children often found to express what we call unusual genius is only that they have not yet been hypnotized with the idea of limitation possessed by those about them. If they continue to escape this hypnotic spell, they remain geniuses or the divine self throughout the earth experience. They do not experience the earth, they experience their universality and the Christ self always. To be the master, the self, is our great work always. The masters of the East never say anything less than that America contains 130 million masters. That means that everyone is a master. That is, of course, true of the whole world. It is a worldwide to them. Every individual is a master. Even man's limitation is proof to them of his mastership, for only a master could make himself to appear that which he is not. This is, in all probability, the only plane and the only condition where death is recognized. Christ said, "Let the dead bury the dead." The true man places no limitation on time. The mortal man alone does this. We get into the mortal or physical only by the placement of time or the designation of time for man's convenience. We have gone on and built up a great world of supposition, a great barrier of supposition between ourselves and the true condition. We have been led to see that barrier as insurmountable. Consequently, many of our philosophers have said that life is unknowable and could not be solved. Children are happy because they live life abundantly. They put no limitations upon life, whatever. The moment we put limitation upon life, we cease to live abundantly. There is no limiting condition in life. Life could not limit itself. It cannot be kept away except through your own attitude of thought toward it. No two individuals have the same vision of life. It is quite often illustrated in this way. It is said that only children and sages are happy because the child has not developed a material sense of value, and the sage knows that the material has no value. To them, form is not the point of consideration, but living life. Know this, there is nothing that really limits man and keeps him in a state of uncertainty and inefficiency but his own thoughts. When these thoughts are removed, he may enter into the life of the universe with ease, and then his life begins to give evidence of its natural possibilities. In that day, when you think, not the Son of Man cometh, was the wise instructions. The distinct difference between the teachings of the illumined and the unillumined is that the illumined teach you to go within yourself for knowledge. All the rest go and teach others to seek outside themselves. You are not likely to find outside of yourself what you have failed to find within yourself. The world gives back to you what you give into the world. This is the philosophy of non-resistance propounded by Gandhi and which is prevalent in Hindu teachings. Christ emphasized this teaching. When you speak or act in a manner that is out of harmony with yourself, you create resistance. And that resistance is the influence of hypnotic practices. It contracts the nature of man and keeps him from expressing what he truly is. Not only does this resistance occur in his own nature, but when brought to the notice of others, they further add to this resistance. And by this practice, the whole world is kept in darkness. The Father who sees in secret rewards thee openly. No one resents the radiation of pure joy, even though they may be exceedingly sad, but try to talk them into joy and they resent it. Tell a poor man that he does not need to be poor, and he's likely to resent it and will offer all sorts of excuses in defense of his poverty. But bring him under the silent influence of abundance, and his very soul expands. Try to separate two men who are fighting, and they're likely to attack you, but radiate a sense of peace from your own inner nature, and they are more than likely to catch your sense of peace and cease fighting. The doctrine of non-resistance is not passive, but is a dynamic radiation of the inner self.